What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Waters and welcome to Left Metal. Going to be doing a some of my favorite live albums, but this is going to be all single album live albums. There's tons of killer double live albums, and those always make the top of people's lists. You know, Live and Dangerous, Double Live Gonzo, Live Bootleg, Live Killers, Live and Dangerous. Peter Frampton Comes Alive. There's tons of them, and they're great. You know, double live albums were huge in the late 70s, early 80s. You know, there's just a lot of them, and they're great. But what's very rarely gets talked about are the single live albums or the shorter albums. Some of them even EP live albums that are just awesome the way they are. You know, they don't need a whole lot of songs. They're just perfect the way they are. And that's kind of the way I feel about a lot of these albums. First of all, playing in the background is one that I pulled out just to give a spin to. I hadn't heard it in a long time, and easily it could be part of this list, and I guess it is. It's because I'm showing it. This is Stars, Live in America, or Live in Action, excuse me. This is the U.S. pressing on Metal Blade Records. I believe that this is the only way it was released as kind of a promo here. Stars was one of the leading metal bands of the late 70s, along with Kiss, AEROSMITH, Angels, and a few others. These bands kept metal alive with the explosion of the 80s. Stars, along with other bands of the 70s, have had a major influence on all of today's million-selling artists. And it just goes on to, you know, praise Stars. And I agree, this is a great live album. You know, the studio albums in the 70s, they just were very polished at times, and they just lost the edge. And a lot of the live albums, especially from the 70s, they kind of pull in that energy, they pull in that live raw edge, and they get that, you know, kind of heavier sound. That's what you got going on here with this Stars album, which is playing very lightly in the background, very lightly, because I know this is copyrighted. So I'm going to just go through these. Let's see, probably should have put them in order, but I really don't have them in any sort of order, so I'm just going to call this 20 albums I like, not in any particular order, because I didn't put them in an order. I'm going to start off with the AMBOY Dukes. This is Ted Nugent and the AMBOY Dukes, Survival of the Fittest. This was pretty much a live album of new material, with the exception of Prodigal Man. I think it was the only one on here that had been released before, but yeah, this is nothing but a jam. This is, you know, 60s, early 70s style jam. Obviously Ted Nugent was already, you know, the main man here. He was the alpha male. The original AMBOY Dukes for the most part were gone, and you had a bunch of new guys back in the band, and you can see Ted Nugent is in large letters, and the AMBOY Dukes is very small underneath in gray, so you can barely read it. It was a Ted Nugent show at this point, so very good live album, but very different from the Nugent solo material in that it's got more of a 60s kind of psychedelic vibe to it, more of a jam vibe, you know, like early Deep Purple. Just had that, you know, those long jams. That's what you're going to get with Survival of the Fittest. This is actually an EP. Always like this one. I have two copies of this, but this is one I picked up at a record show. But this is Accept Kazoo Band, I believe is how you say it, Kazoo Band. And it is a 6-song live EP from the classic 80s era of Accept. Love it to this day. I've got a mint copy of this that's very white on in my record collection, but this is what I picked up at a record show, which I just thought was cool because it was not very expensive, and it's actually signed to Scott, and it's signed by all the band members, which I thought was awesome because it's, you know, signed to me. But I can't claim that this album was signed, you know, for me, because I didn't get it signed. I do have other Accept albums. I did meet them and get stuff signed, but not this particular one. Anyhow, regardless, great live album, raw, crunchy, heavy metal. Most of the stuff here is from, you know, the Metal Heart era, which is what was their album at the time. So you got Metal Heart, Screaming for a Love Bite, Up to the Limit, Head Over Heels, Love Child, and Living for Tonight. So fantastic album by Sir Udo and company. This too is an EP, but I couldn't not include this one. I would have loved for this one to have been longer, but honestly, I love this EP just the way it is. This is Iron Maiden Live Killers. I can't tell you how many times I played this one when I was a kid in the 80s, and even to this day. This is fantastic. It has been re-released, bootlegs of it and full shows of this era, you know, with Paul Di'Anno on vocals, but this album is just a classic. Running Free, Remember Tomorrow, Rothschild, Killers, and Innocence Exile. Dedicated to all the headbangers, earth dogs, metal merchants around the world. Thanks for making our first world tour such a success. Yeah, fantastic live album. New wave of British heavy metal at the time. Very raw, very aggressive, very crunchy. Almost a punk ethic to it, especially from Paul Di'Anno. I love the early Maiden stuff with Di'Anno, and that live album is no exception. Jimi Hendrix, Band of Gypsies. Some people don't even realize this is a live album because it, was kind of released as all new material. But it was recorded live in 1979, I believe it was. Let me see, I'm pretty sure it's in the back. 79. Duh. In 1969. Recorded live New Year's Eve 1969, 1970. So yeah, it was in 69. And this was a new band for Jimmy. He was trying to reach a different crowd. He had basically a white audience for all those early Hendrix Experience records, and he was trying to reach more of his own culture. He was trying to reach more of the black people at the time. And that might sound racist coming out of my mouth these days because everybody's on, in this big racist kick right now, but that's what was happening at the time. He was trying to reach that crowd. So he changed his sound a little bit and was going for a different group of people. So on here you've got Buddy Miles and I'm trying to think who else was playing on this thing. I can't remember. I'm going to have to open it up and look. But nothing on here that was recorded on any of his studio albums with the Experience. This was all stuff that he recorded new, and of course the band's not listed on there anyway. Oh, here it is. Yeah, Buddy Miles and Billy Cox. Billy Cox, I believe, was in the military with Jimmy, so very cool. It is a gatefold, but it is only a single album. This is an original pressing. I've had it forever. It's rusty, it's crusty, it's mine. Nobody has one just like mine. Alright, next up, all-time classic. If I did a top 10, I'm pretty sure this one would be in it. Basically the album that introduced me to these guys back in, was it 78 when this came out or so? I was already into bands like Kiss and Ted Nugent and stuff like that. And I knew of Cheap Trick, but this album just pulled me in. I took that power pop sound that they had on those first three albums, and it just intensified it with that energy that you can't get in the studio, especially in the 70s. And every song on here is great. I Want You to Want Me was a huge hit from this. Radio stations were playing the live version constantly, and you still hear it to this day on classic rock radio stations. So great album. It has been re-released many times. I actually have a box set that has the entire performance. It was a 2-night performance. They just chose the best songs, the best takes for this single album release, and it's just perfect the way it is. It is a nice package. It did come with, it is a gatefold, lots of photos. So you got the heartthrobs on the front. You got the eyeballs in the back. Rick Nielsen always looked like a bit of an oddball, but that was part of their charm. They had that yin and yang thing going on. Lots of live photos in the center, and then of course it came with a nice fat booklet full of photos and whatnot. So always was a cool set. Still love it to this day. Easily one of the greatest live albums of all time. Like I said, if I did a top 10, it would certainly be in that top 10. I'll put that away later. Alright, this next one, this is actually the second live album that they did. The first album I thought had terrible sound. But anyhow, this is a recent release from Death Angel. This is live in San Francisco, and man, this is supercharged, super great recording, energetic, heavy, raw. It just captures this band. I'd say in their prime. A lot of bands, hit their prime in the 80s, and Death Angel definitely, had hit a prime in the 80s, but they hit a second since they're, since getting back together. This is just fantastic live album. It's just so over the top awesome. I can't even put it into words. So, recent album, 19. Now I'm really messing up years. 2000 something or other. Man, it's such a little type on the bottom. 2015 on Nuclear Blast Records. So yeah, fantastic live album. Pure metal, pure speed metal. Great stuff. As well as this one. This is actually another EP. This one actually is from the 80s. This is Ryan Reinhardt with Dark Angel. This is Live Scars. So this is a full, I guess it would be considered a full length. It's 8 songs. It's actually the same length as a lot of other single albums from back then. But yeah, this is just, again, pure awesome thrash metal. Why these guys weren't, as big as at least as big as bands like Testament and Overkill at the time they should have been. Of course, they are very well known now, and they've got a huge cult following. But yeah, they just weren't part of that big four, that first wave. They're more of a second wave band, but they never really got above, like, they never got the major label contract like bands like Testament and Overkill did. They were on Combat Records, and still great band. Love them. Fantastic drummer in this band. Excuse me, I'm a little dry. Gene Hoglan was the drummer for this band. I'm not going to pull it apart. This is actually the original album was just a single sleeve. This is actually a repressing, and it's a gatefold, but there's nothing special about the gatefold. So, awesomeness. These guys are still together. They haven't recorded anything new since they got back together in 2014, so 4 years, doing lots of shows here and there, but they're not putting anything new out. If you know me, you know I love this band. This is AEROSMITH Classics Live. They actually have two Classic Lives 2 recordings. This one here is more of a compilation. Most of the songs on here were recorded with the even though they have Joe Perry pictured on here, most of the songs weren't with Joe Perry. It was Jimmy Crespo who played most of the songs on here. There are a couple songs on here that were from '78. I believe, let's see if I can figure out which ones they were. So Train Kept Rolling, Kings and Queens, Sweet Emotion, Dream On, Mama Can, 3 Mile Smile, Reefer Head Woman, and Lord of the Thighs. So I think the only songs that were recorded in '77 might have been Kings and Queens and Sweet Emotion. Regardless, most of this stuff featured Jimmy Crespo playing guitar, not Joe Perry. But it's a fantastic live album. Crespo, wasn't kind of... Tyler was passing out on stage at the time. He was just long gone. But he kind of kept it together, and Crespo was a great guitar player, had a great look, had a great personality. I actually met him once. But anyhow, I love this album. I've loved it since it came out. Second one's good too, but that was more of a more recent '80s performance of the original band. This one here is, very of its time, and if you know AEROSMITH when they were completely drug-addled, that's what you're going to get here. Very, very good album. This happens to be a Japanese pressing that was given to me by my very good friend from Canada, John Hockley. This is a European-only release. This is Blackfoot, Highway Song Live. Why this wasn't released in the United States, I don't know. They were huge for whatever reason in the UK, especially in the 80s. All those metal fans over there, new wave of British heavy metal fans in the early 80s seemed to really latch on to this particular band. And bikers really seemed to like this band for some reason. They played in New Jersey when I was still living out there, and I'd say 90% of the crowd were bikers. The parking lot was packed full of bikes as opposed to, cars. But yeah, very good. Very heavy southern rock. They definitely mixed, metal and hard rock with their southern edge. They were never like a, Lynyrd Skynyrd, all that. Even though Ricky Medlock, who is the main man here, was in Skynyrd for a time. He was their drummer and played on their Muscle Shoals album. And he actually sang for them as well a little bit. But anyhow, this is a great live, energetic album. So you got Gimme Gimme Gimme, Every Man Should Know Queenie, Good Morning. Good morning. I love that song. Dry County, Rolling and Tumbling, Fly Away, Road Fever, Trouble in Mind, Train Train, Highway Song, and Hoay the Lads. Just a fun album. Capturing, these guys were definitely in their prime for this album. Again, great album on Atco Records, released in the UK. I don't think it was ever released here, at least not on vinyl in the US. It may have been re-released here on CD years later, but... This one, another would be in my top 10. Some Enchanted Evening, Blue Oyster Cult. Of course, these guys have two stellar live albums that are, double albums that would probably make most people's lists. But I've always liked this short album. It's just perfect. Starts off with Are You Ready to Rock? Goes into Extraterrestrial Intelligence and right into Astronomy, which is a fantastic, early Blue Oyster Cult song. Side 2 features Kick Out the Jams, which is an MC5 cover. Don't Fear the Reaper and Godzilla. And We Gotta Get Out of This Place, which was, what was that, the Animals? We gotta get out of this place. If it's the last thing we ever do. Was that the Animals? I think it was. Anyhow, another cover song. So love this EP. I always like the cover too. It's very 80s, very heavy metal looking, and I've always considered Blue Oyster Cult to be one of the original heavy metal bands to come out of the first wave of heavy metal. That gotta be in there. AC/DC. If You Want Blood, You Got It. Would it be in my top 10 of all time live albums? Probably not. Love this album. Think it's a great album. But I don't know. I just think I don't know. I don't know why it wouldn't be in my top 10, because I think I love the studio album so much, and I never quite got into this one as much as I did some of the studio albums. But regardless, it belongs in this list because it's just one of the prime single live albums from whatever time period. This is kind of going everywhere. Of course, Bon Scott era, which has always been my favorite. I've always loved the cover, especially as a kid. I mean, it's kind of morbid. You got Angus impaling himself with his own guitar, and then of course laying on his back. Laying on his stomach with his headstock all the way through him. Very strange cover, but just a great live album from one of Australia's finest. Alright, we still got quite a few here, so I'm going to start going a little quicker because I'm see how far in. I'm already 50 minutes in. Alright, Pat Travers Band live. This is Go For What You Know. Boom, boom, out go the lights. I mean, everybody should know that song. FM, classic rock radio played that live version of the song, but the whole album is just supercharged, man. It really captures the edge and of Pat Travers Band and his prime here, definitely in his prime. This is before he lost everybody. So you got Tommy Aldridge on drums here. Tommy, who of course went on to be with Ozzy, Whitesnake, among others, House of Lords, many different bands. You got Mars Crawling, who recently passed away, and of course you got Pat Thrall. Yeah, Pat Thrall right there, who hasn't been with Travers forever, but just a great live album. This one's kind of an oddball. Not many people in the U.S. seem to even know this band, but this is Kim Mitchell's Max Webster. Fantastic live record from them. Canadian hard rock, slightly progressive. I love this album. This is the album that really pulled me in. First song I heard from them was the song that they did with Rush, which is slipping my mind at the moment. Which is not on here because this is, came out before that album did. But yeah, this is bombastic, just great. It really captures their energy, their sound, captures that energetic crowd as well. Band just fed off that. Very good live album from Canada's progressive rock band, Max Webster. Man, that's what? This is the third Canadian album in a row. So we got Pat Travers, Max Webster. Frank Marino, Mahogany Rush, probably one of his most popular albums. I think this is a great album. Now, I would not put this as my favorite live album from him. He's got a couple double live albums, which I absolutely love. This album is very popular due to their cover of Johnny B. Good and Purple Haze, and what was the other one that's on here? And Backdoor Man, which are all cover songs. And Frank does great cover songs, but man, I think that this album is... the whole thing is good. I love his original material far better than any cover songs, although he does do a stellar version of Purple Haze. So very cool live album from Frank Marino, Mahogany Rush. Definitely worthy. It would probably be in my top 50 albums of all time, just because I love it that much. So 1 second, gotta flip stars over. Alright, keep it on. Michael Schenker Group, Rock Will Never Die. This is mid 80s, 84. Live album featuring just basically the original band here. You got Gary Barden on vocals, who had sang on the first two albums. He disappeared, then he came back, sang on this live album. But this is just a good album. So you got Captain Nemo, Rock My Nights Away, Are You Ready to Rock, Attack of the Mad Axemen, Into the Arena, Rock Will Never Die, Desert Song, I'm Gonna Make You Mine, and Doctor from UFO. UFO, fantastic first wave of British heavy metal band, Michael Schenker Group. Fantastic new wave of British heavy metal band. That's the way I see it. So, speaking of new wave of British heavy metal, no list would be complete without this classic. Deserves to be in the top 10, if not number 1. The Eagles Landed by Saxon captures this band at their ballsiest. Super energetic. Crowd is just fanatical. It's fantastic. There's just nothing bad about this album. It captures just this band in their prime during the 80s when this momentum was still building from this whole movement. And these guys were beginning to capture the world. Who knows? They could have been as big as a band like Def Leppard or Iron Maiden. They never really did gain that sort of fame, but nobody knew here. I mean, we all thought they were going to be that big because they were just fantastic and they were so popular at the time. Motorcycle Man, 747, Strangers in the Night, Princes in the Night, Strong Arm of the Law, Heavy Metal Thunder, 20,000 Feet, Wheels of Steel, Never Surrender, Fire in the Sky, and Machine Gun. which was Machine Gun was Saxon's almost thrash song. So great album. Coming back to the USA, the Rods Live, Power Trio from the East Coast. Just they're the Rods. Capturing them, they were always kind of a, you know, never a huge band. This captures them in a small club or a small venue, and which is perfect. You know, I kind of hate when bands who are not that popular yet, you know, they're like a club or small venue band, and they like add in those kind of large crowd noises to make it sound like there's more people there. No, not here. This is just raw, recorded live, great stuff. I'm not sure if there was any studio overdubs or not. There may have been. I don't really care. I like what's here, and it sounds fantastic. Again, East Coast, USA, straightforward, early 80s heavy metal from the Rods. The live photos in the back just say it all. You know, these guys were bombastic, energetic, and just had a stage presence that could capture anybody. So, great band. Another EP, US band, Riot. This is Riot Live. Basically a 6-song, yeah, 6-song EP. You know, not much of a cover on this one, not much of a back cover, but if you're a fan of the, you know, that whole new wave of British heavy metal movement and the metal movement at large, United States, Riot were definitely part of that movement. You know, with their first albums coming out in the late 70s, and then gaining momentum in the 80s. I really think the loss of, you know, the constant changing of vocalists really killed their momentum, because they should have been a huge band, but they weren't. And this Riot Live album just captures them in their absolute prime. Limited edition, manufacturer suggested listed price $4.98. Yeah, good luck finding it at that price. Going back to the UK, this one would probably be 1 or 2 as well. We're up there with Saxon, Motorhead. What do you got to say? You know, this is their classic live album. I don't think anybody would not include this as into heavy metal or hard rock. This is No Sleep Till Hammersmith. Didn't matter if you were doing a single live album or a double live album. This is just a great album. Everything about it, from the artwork to the, you know, to the photos, to the music, to the banter in between stage. To I love the little intro to We Are the Road Crew, the loudest road crew. It's just fantastic. And then the guy comes on there and he's just mumbling all his words. It's just hilarious. And he lets out this like blood curdling scream right before the song. It's classic. If you know Motorhead, you know this album. This one probably wouldn't make anybody's list. Makes mine. I like this album. A lot of people hated it. I don't know why, but this is Ted Nugent, Intensities. His last album for Epic Records. It definitely was a contract filler for him, because he's moving on to Atlantic Records. But it's all new material, all recorded live. But man, it's just prime Nugent to me. You know what I mean? It's got that. It's Bo Diddley. It's Chuck Berry on speed. You know, it's Ted, and it just captures that raw live energy. And every song on here was unreleased, and it was all recorded in 10 different cities. So that's why it's called Intensities in 10 cities. So you've got 10 tracks, 10 cities, all new songs. Put Up or Shut Up, great song. Spontaneous Combustion, another great song. And then you got My Love is Like a Tire Iron. I love this album. Right down to the introductions of the songs. Every single thing about it, I love it. I'm not sure why other people didn't like it. I mean, if you like an album like Wango Tango, there's no reason you wouldn't like this one. So, 10 New Intensities, what was this, 1980? 81. Another EP. Sorry if this offends anybody. This is Overkill's Fuck You. This was a EP, 5 songs, was it? 6 songs? 5 songs. So you get the album title song, you get Rotten to the Core, Hammerhead, Use Your Head, and Electro Violence. Recorded in Cleveland, Ohio. You know, seemed to be Overkill's favorite place to record is Cleveland. But yeah, it's just a classic thrash metal live album capturing... I'm not actually even a huge fan of thrash live albums, because thrash is very precise, very, I mean, most of the time it's, you know, it's got that fast downward picking. It's very difficult to record because everything is played so fast and everything is kind of in that mid-range. But when they play live, it's just sloppier, and it's never, you know, it's never, and because they move around stage so much, most thrash live albums or live EPs are just, they're just not what you want to hear when you want to hear thrash metal. You know, you want to hear the studio albums. But in this case, I just think this captured this band just exactly in their early stages, in their early years, when they were just still young and hungry and devouring crowds. So, fantastic EP. yeah, this one would be in my top 5 as well. Unleashed in the East, Judas Priest, not much to say. Everybody knows this one. Yes, the vocals were re-recorded. Rob was sick when he was out in Japan recording this album. There was actually a Japanese version that has an extra 45 with 2 extra songs. Has been released on CD, and those extra songs have been added to the CD, which is cool. I have that. But as it stands, not a bad song on this album. Absolutely love it. No complaints. It's Judas Priest captured in their prime. Raw, energetic. Again, it captures that energy regardless of whether some of it's been re-recorded or not. I don't care. 3 more. Genesis Live, Peter Gabriel. This is one of my, you know, outside of the normal hard rock metal stuff I listen to. This is Peter Gabriel live with Genesis, and the band was very proggy at the time, very 70s at the time. And Peter Gabriel was very much the unique character, not only in his weird costumes he would wear on stage and his stage persona, but in his banter was just bizarre, and it was almost as entertaining as the songs themselves, because it was almost like just nonsense storytelling stuff. It was very cool. I love this record. Songs are fairly long. So side 2 is actually only 2 songs, but it's probably at least 20 minutes long. So that side. So you got the musical box and the knife, Watchers of the Sky, Get Him Out by Friday, and the Return of the Giant Hogweed. And you can kind of see some of the live shots in the back. And that's one of the other things I love about live albums is the live shots with the bands. 2 more to go. Gary Moore, Thin Lizzy guitarist, solo artist, huge as part of the new wave of British heavy metal movement back in the early 80s. He was definitely a hard rock artist or heavy metal artist at that time. This captures him live during that period. So you've got on here Rockin' Every Night, Wishing Well, which of course is a cover song, I Can't Wait Till Tomorrow, Nuclear Attack, White Knuckles, Rockin' and Rollin', Back on the Streets, which is a song he recorded with Phil Lynott, and Sunset. His band on here is just an all-star band. Not a name on here you wouldn't know. So you got Ian Peace on drums, Deep Purple, Neil Murray on bass guitar. You got John Solomon on vocals and keyboards, and then you've got Don Airey on keyboards. So yeah, just stellar live album. Again, this is a Japanese pressing. It is a gatefold, but it is only a single album, so I'm not going to pull that one apart because it's just taking too much time on this video. Easily, again, in my top 5, I think this is one of the greatest things I ever recorded. It's perfect the way it is. This is FOGHAT Live. Always loved this album. Always loved the cover art with these cutouts, and then you could pull the thing out, and the inside's got all these fantastic live photos of this band. Obviously during their prime, when they were still a huge band. You know, they were selling out stadiums as opposed to now where they play small clubs and small venues. But yeah, this is the classic band. So you got Dave Prevet, you got Rod Price, Roger Earl, Greg McGregor on bass. Roger Earl being the only member in the band who's still in the band. Of course, we lost Lonesome Dave Perrett, and we've lost Rod Price over the years. So, but yeah, fantastic live album. It takes their boogie rock, slide guitar, electric insanity, and just ups the amps, ups the intensity, and it's everything you want in a live album. So there you go. That was 20 or so live albums, single live albums that I love, and I hope you appreciate this video. Sorry it was so long, but it was a lot to show, so I'm going to cut it short and say God bless. Stay strong.